Hi there, and welcome to Out There, a Cryptid podcast. I'm your ghost host, TJ, and today I will be telling you different Reddit stories where users recount their experiences with possession. Whether they themselves were possessed or they witnessed someone else, we are talking about possession Reddit stories. Let's dive in. Welcome, everyone, to the next evolution of Out There, a Cryptid podcast. 2024 had us doing a lot of experimenting, but it was all to bring you this: new cover art, a new theme song, new structure, and a new way to support us. That's right, we finally have a Patreon. After years of being an independent podcast, Josh has decided to take Out There a step further. Supporting us on Patreon will give you ad-free episodes, early releases, and even more interesting things to come in the future. All of this for just $5 a month. It shows us that you want more of Out There. And trust me, we have plenty of ideas for bonus episodes and possibly even new exclusive shows. As Josh has already said, new episodes of Out There will be dropping every Wednesday. And if you follow the paranormal and unexplained Instagram accounts, don't worry, they're not going anywhere. They will just be inactive from here on out. Instead, posts from each episode will be made on the Out There Cryptid's original account. Now, last year I announced an Out There Paranormal TikTok account, then promptly did nothing with it before deleting it. That's because we are now on TikTok at Out There Cryptids, where we'll discuss creepy content, behind the scenes moments, and facts that may not make it into some episodes. Now, between our new look, Patreon, and Weird Club's return later this month, what else could I possibly announce? Well, members of our Discord may remember that I've mentioned I was working on a book. I am excited to announce that my first ever novel, Dear Editor, will be released on March 18th of this year exclusively for Kindle ebook. Dear Editor follows Ethan Holloway, who, following a deadly chase, has been fired from his detective position. Not long after, he finds himself as the target of a copycat serial killer's game as he receives multiple letters that he doesn't understand. This copycat's name? The Zodiac Killer. I'll be discussing more about my book in Weird Club later this month, so I hope to see you all there. We'll dive straight into the possession Reddit stories right after this. Our first story comes from user Char Alhaz. A few years ago, I stayed on the Queen Mary for a weekend with my mom, sister, and stepdad to celebrate my mom's birthday. We're all somewhat enthused by the paranormal, so we decided to take a ghost tour of the famously haunted ship. Honestly, there were countless bizarre things that happened on that tour, but the scariest part was what happened in a notoriously haunted stateroom. This is a room that had previously been one for guests to stay in, but they eventually stopped allowing guests to stay in it and completely stripped it down because of how many guests were reporting terrifying experiences in it. This was in 2017, and as of 2018, room B340 is now available to stay in once again. Our tour group was led into the room, and the tour guide started talking about the reported experiences in the room, and gave a name to the reported entity who inhabited it. I don't remember the name, so for the sake of the story, let's say it was Jim. The tour guide kept saying Jim this and Jim that, and out of nowhere, I started to feel totally enraged. I'm talking violently enraged. I wanted to tackle someone and beat them senseless, and I'm normally a completely non-violent and passive person. Over and over in my head, unrelentingly, all I could think was, my name is not Jim. My name is not Jim. I couldn't stop it. I was so angry, I was getting dizzy. I was nauseous. I felt totally overwhelmed and like I was going to collapse or kill someone. It was one of the worst paranormal experiences I've ever had. I ended up walking out of the stateroom before the tour group was moving on, and as soon as I did, the feeling released. It was unforgettable. I think whatever lives in that room truly had a hold of me. When I found this story, I knew it had to be in this episode because we've actually explored the Queen Mary before on the podcast. The entity this user is referring to is actually Walter J. Adamson. Though the cause of Walter's death is unknown, he's the prominent spirit that haunts room B340 aboard the Queen Mary. Now, if we want to dig deeper, we could hazard a guess that this spirit may not even be Walter. What I mean by that is that since we have no official record of Walter's death, it's entirely possible that Walter Adamson didn't even pass away in this room. This spirit could be angry that everyone assumes them to be Walter and gets angry anytime a tour guide gets it wrong. Either that, or it is Walter, and this tour guide slipped up and kept saying the wrong name during the tour. Our next story comes from user The AP Tona. I'm wondering if anyone might have some insight on what happened to me and my mother. The story begins on a crisp autumn night. My mother and I spent the evenings alone together while my stepfather worked. My life during this time was spun into chaos. My mother had been stricken with sickness and mental illness. She was constantly in and out of the hospital. At the age of 11 and 12, it became my responsibility to take care of her needs. I would wake her up every morning, make sure she ate and took her medication. Most nights, my father was working, or at his various bowling and golf leagues. So the job of watching my mother was always thrown upon me. When my stepfather was home, he was angry, and always took his stress and frustration out on me by screaming and yelling or belittling me. Looking back on this years later, I discovered that he was a narcissistic and extremely emotionally and mentally abusive person. Anyways, on that faithful night, I was sitting at the kitchen table, having a conversation with my mother. She was clearly intoxicated. As my mother was speaking, mid-sentence, her eyes rolled back into her head. Then her head slowly went back, resting it on the window ledge behind the chair. A deep, man-like voice started to speak to me, just repeating, "I'm so sorry, Megan, but everything is going to be all right." I was little and unsure what was going on, and I told it I was scared and to go away, which it did upon my request. My mother's head immediately popped back up, and she finished her sentence. A couple weeks later, shortly after I got home from school, my mother was acting weirder than normal. We were sitting at the kitchen table when she went off about how she was a bad person and mother, then confessed to me that she took an entire bottle of sleeping pills. She then moved to the living room and started to foam at the mouth. I called 911 immediately. When she got to the hospital, they had to pump her stomach, and her heart stopped 3 times, each time being resuscitated back to life. Since that day, I've always wondered who gave me that warning. Was it a spirit guide or a friendly ghost? I've always found possessions like this interesting. Typical possessions are seen as demonic, where a dark force inhabits someone's body and leads them to pursue violence or other strange, often harmful acts. Possessions like this, however, are so much more interesting. When a benevolent force takes over a person, you get moments like this, where someone, presumably from the user's life, returns to say something that they never could in life. Though it's also possible that this was a guardian angel, using their mother's body to tell them that everything will be okay. Our third story comes from user Dries2912. Hi guys, I'm from Vietnam. I know this is hard to believe, but the fact is that I have seen this phenomenon in my house. A week ago, my mom's friend came to my home to chat with my mom. Everything is okay until she suddenly had a slight convulsion. After that, she told us that she/he was her father-in-law. We've all known that he died about 5 months ago. Let's talk a little bit about her. She is a bride in a family where everyone treats her badly except for her father-in-law. Her husband's family is not poor at all, but she is not helped in any way financially and has to raise 2 sons and take care of her husband, who suffered an accident due to a traffic accident. Even so, her father-in-law loved her very much because she took care of him until he died. Let's get back to our story. After she got a convulsion, her voice changed from a lady to an old man. She/he said he always follows her to protect her. After that, he told us about some story that nobody in her family knows. One thing that made me believe in this is my mom's friend never smokes. But after this, she asked me if I could go to the market and buy her a pack of cigarettes. My mom said that phenomenon has happened many times before in her working place. I used not to believe in this thing, but I've changed my mind now. This story is very similar to our last. Once again, it seems like a loved one or a guardian angel is channeling themselves through a host to show that they are here to protect this woman. As mentioned previously, possession is usually seen as a demonic act, but moments like this prove that there are good entities that reside on the other side of the veil. We'll be back with more stories after this. So, speaking of demonic possession, our next story comes from user disconnected_mind. So, before I begin, let me get this straight. This sounds like a creepypasta, but it's not. This is one of the scariest experiences I have ever had in my life. It has been one of the most eye-opening experiences I've ever had. I've seen dark figures, felt a dark presence, and of course, witnessed the possession. This is a long post, but it is definitely worth the read. Because of the little browsing I did, it doesn't appear this stuff pops up often on this subreddit. So let's get started. Let's give these guys some names. Let's call the friend witnessing this with me, Zach, and the one being possessed, Dylan. It all started with me and Zach in the basement at Dylan's house. We were hanging out whilst Dylan was getting ready to go outside and check out the trampoline. He suddenly stands and stares at me and Zach at the top of the steps with a blank face for about 2 minutes. We were calling out his name, and he just simply wasn't responding. Once he snaps out of it, he says nothing, and we call him over to tell him what just happened. And he turns out to have no recollection of what happened. We didn't think of it too terribly much at the time. Maybe he just blanked out or something. After all, he is a pretty weird dude. We decided to go to Zach's place. On the way to Zach's place, we all have a dark feeling in the car, as if someone else was in the car with us. Once we get to Zach's, we all hang out downstairs. Dylan is getting a really bad headache and feels super tired. Me and Zach start to feel very uncomfortable, as if there was something very dark there, watching us and bringing us down. So we go upstairs to chill out. I want to go downstairs to grab my blanket to sleep up there with him. Up comes one of the scariest moments within this haunting experience. So as I go to exit the room to go downstairs, I suddenly run into Dylan. He's standing at the doorway. The look which he gave still haunts me. I still have a difficult time explaining the look. His head was angled down, with his eyes looking directly into my eyes, into my soul. He had a demonic smile with angry eyes. The look on which he gave scared me to complete pale. I felt as if my subconscious left my body. He pulled out his pocket knife and started to walk towards me. I turned around and slammed the door shut, using my foot as a door wedge to stop him from coming in. I felt as if something left my body, my soul. Zach told me later on that I was unbelievably pale. The fight or flight instinct kicked in. We were in fear of our life. We heard him stab the door 3 times, and the marks on the door are there to prove it. We lock the door, we go and grab rifles, and prepare. We were truly scared for our lives. We wait. 10 minutes later, we suddenly hear Dylan say, and I quote, "Dylan is sleeping, it's safe to come out now." We wait there for at least 30 minutes until he knocks on the door asking to come in, as he was very scared. He sounded sincere, and so we let him in. And he suddenly asks why we're holding rifles, and we tell him. He is bewildered and had no idea. While in Zach's room, I witnessed a dark mist arise from the ground and then suddenly shoot right towards Dylan, where he feels as if he's pushed back. None of us were comfortable there, so we go to my place, about a 15-minute drive away. On the way back to my place, we felt it following us. So before Dylan came into the apartment, we decided to salt every entrance in the apartment, including windows. The second we stepped into the salted apartment, there was a huge sense of relief. It was like 110 pounds was lifted off our shoulders. We stay there for a few hours before Dylan, the smart guy he is, decides to try and fight the demon himself. He walks into the unsalted hallway, where I saw the figure itself for the first time. It was 6 foot 2 inches tall or so, and dark like a shadow. As the fight begins, he decides it's a great idea to try and antagonize the demon by taunting it, where I watched it fly right past him, faster than any creature ever could. The second I see it fly by him, of course, Dylan sees it fly by and turns around, reinforcing in my mind that what I was seeing wasn't an imagination. As it flew by, it had a very dark feeling, as always. After 10 minutes of doing this, he ends up getting possessed. He walked out of the secure building and stared at us from the ground through the balcony with that same blank stare. He decides to try and re-enter the building from where my guess the demon would go right through the doors, where Dylan runs full speed into the door, knocking him over, where he gets up and states, "You guys really threw me outside?" After that, we made him stay inside the apartment for a few days, making sure we were always with him. A few days later, he had finally gotten rid of it by strengthening his mental strength. We ended up trapping it in a room with a salt line, where we all stayed out of it. After a few days, we removed the salt line, and then never saw it again. Me and Zach, after this experience, went out, bought crosses, and got them blessed by a pastor. And to this day, we wear them 24/7, never taking them off. TLDR, a demon possessed a friend, and me and another friend witnessed it all. So at the end of this post, he links a YouTube video where he interviews Zach, and you get to hear these events from his perspective. So if you want to check out any of these stories, I'd highly recommend this one. Now, this kind of possession is the typical one that you'll see in movies, minus the goo oozing from the mouth. Whatever possessed Dylan seemed out for blood, as there was no hesitation to attack the other boys. Possessions like this are obviously the scariest, not just because of the extreme violence that can come from it, but the lack of warning that precedes it. Those who are around someone who is about to be demonically possessed will report that the possessee acts out of character, or just off compared to their regular behavior. This shouldn't normally be cause for alarm because it could mean a number of different things. But if one of your friends starts acting extra strange, maybe just be careful. This next story is from user Mr. Beaver 3601. I'm going to get straight to the point and keep it short. Don't want this to be boring and long. In 2012, we went to Pakistan on holiday, and my cousin was 1 year old at the time. So my 1-year-old cousin was sitting and playing under a tree in the backyard with others when he started acting weird. He wasn't acting normal and kept screaming and behaving weird. So at night, I was woken up by my aunt's mother-in-law as she wakes up at night and prays. My aunt, my cousin's mom, and her mother-in-law and me saw my 1-year-old cousin crawling away and saw him just crawling outside towards the tree he was playing under. My aunt started crying, but her mother-in-law said to her, "Don't go after him." Then I realized why she said not to go after him. My 1-year-old cousin was still asleep in the same room. And whatever that was crawling away and going back to the tree, looking like my cousin, was the thing that temporarily possessed him, and it was returning back to the tree. The next morning, he was completely normal, and it never happened again. I saw that thing crawling away with my own eyes, and wouldn't have known it wasn't my cousin. You can believe this story or not, but 3 people saw it happen, including me. At first, I wasn't sure if I should label this as a possession story. To me, it seemed more like a doppelganger or another shapeshifting creature, but I couldn't really come up with anything. In demonic folklore, it is said that there are some demons that can steal another creature's physical form. This could have been one of those situations. What I'm curious to know is if their aunt's mother-in-law caused this creature to flee with the prayers, or if she started praying because she saw two of the same child. If the prayers came before, then this would certainly have to be some kind of demonic presence, as the prayers would have drawn the creature away. More stories right after this. Our sixth story comes from user Striking Survey 9383. So this morning, I walked into my mom's room like I always do before school. I went in the first time to do my hair in her bathroom. She was completely knocked the fuck out facing me, the bathroom, and her eyes were clearly closed. Then I walked out and came back in about 15 minutes later. I said, "Okay, Mom, I'm leaving," which usually wakes her up, but it didn't this time. She didn't move at all. Now she was facing the window, completely on her other side, with her back to the bathroom. I walked over to her and saw that she was awake. As I got closer, I saw her eyes were completely open, and she had a dead stare, looking at the ceiling. Mind you, her whole body was still lying down, facing the window. I said, "Mommy," louder, thinking she was just playing with me, and I kept yelling, "Mom." I started shaking her, but she was still staring at the ceiling, her eyes not flinching. After a minute of yelling and shaking, she finally reacted, blinked deeply, and asked, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" I had this very uneasy feeling I'd never experienced before. I told everyone, my mom, my daughter, and the dog, to get out, and I left the room myself because I felt so uneasy. We walked to the living room, and she looked extremely tired. We started talking, and she kept assuring me that everything was fine and that she didn't know why I was acting this way. After calming down, I left for school, and when I called her, she told me not to worry, that she was okay, and she tried to laugh about it. As I was arriving at school, she suddenly said it was all a joke, but deep down, I know it wasn't, even though she swears it was. Mind you, this past month or so, other creepy and unsettling things have been happening to her. Last month, my mom told me she was falling asleep in her room. Everyone else was asleep, including my dad, who was in bed with her. She clearly saw the shadow of a person pass by the TV, which is right in front of her. She got scared, closed her eyes, and went back to sleep. Within the same week, she had a dream, which she doesn't fully remember, that was related to an exorcism. My dad started waking her up because he noticed she was speaking weirdly, like in tongues, he said. When he finally woke her up, she went straight into a panic, screaming and praying. That's all she's told me so far, because she doesn't like to scare me. But honestly, I don't know what to think. And creepy things have always happened to my house since I was 7. And mind you, I'm 25 now, but it's never been this unsettling. And after my grandma passed away in her bedroom in 2015, more paranormal things have happened. I just don't know what to think. I'm not much of a firm believer, but after what I saw today, I don't know what signs to look out for, or to just let it go and move on. A common theme I found while looking for these stories is that a lot of mothers seem to get possessed. While some of these stories will be saved for other episodes, you can trust me, there were a lot. And if I'm being completely honest, I don't know why. Entities, especially demonic, seem to target individuals with a weaker spiritual defense. Whether it's a lack of religion, or the most likely, being emotionally vulnerable. If I had to hazard a guess as to why so many mothers fall victim to these creatures, it's because, let's be honest, being a mom is hard. Taking care of a family is difficult, and it can take a toll on even the strongest people. This next story comes from user sweetflower_9. This is a long one. I've had some strange, scary, inexplicable things happen to me in my childhood, but this event will forever haunt my existence. I was 13 years old at the time, now 25, when my best friend, we'll call her Sarah, and two other boys in our grade decided to hang out in town. We grew up in a small town in New Jersey, where there wasn't much to do besides hang out at local parks and such in the area. We decided to walk to this one park on a lake that sits at the bottom of a large wooded hill. On top of the hill is a cemetery. It was broad daylight, early afternoon time, so being young and dumb, we decided just to take a walk through the cemetery, and thought nothing of it. My best friend was wiping off debris from tombstones and monuments in an effort to respect the dead. We were reading the gravestones and speaking aloud the names of the deceased individuals. It was actually really peaceful. The four of us decided to sit in a patch of grass a little ways away from the graves to relax after walking around. We naturally sat in a circle formation, and Sarah was next to me on my left. We were engaged in conversation when I suddenly noticed Sarah had gone really quiet. I looked over at her, and she was staring off into nothing. I immediately asked her if she was okay, and she sort of snapped out of it and said, "Yeah, she's fine." A minute or so later, she was staring into space, and she covered her ears. I asked what's going on, and she said, "I can't hear. They're screaming at us." Now, I'm terrified, and I ask who is screaming. She doesn't respond and starts to rock back and forth. My heart is beating out of my chest. I call her name again, and I instinctively throw my cell phone right at her head, and she didn't even flinch. She rocked back and forth for a few more seconds before looking down into her lap. She then looks up at me with the most evil, demonic smile. Her face was fixed in an expression I've never even seen her make. It didn't even look like her face. Immediately, I knew she was possessed. This was my absolute worst nightmare come true, and I was terrified to my core. There are no words to describe the overwhelming amount of fear that consumed me. My fight or flight response kicked in, and I just blacked out. I came to a few seconds later and found myself about 100 feet away from her and the boys. She was still staring at me, smiling, completely still, not even blinking. I was screaming and crying her name, and I was frozen with fear. She finally broke her demonic gaze from me, looked back into her lap, got up, and ran away right into the woods. It took me a few seconds to unfreeze, and I came to the realization that she was in danger, and I needed to go after her. I ran and grabbed my cell phone and followed her into the woods, down the hill into the park area, where I find her sitting on a swing. I approach her and ask if she's okay. She is extremely disoriented and asks, "Where are we? We need to stay. We need to go back." I said, "No, the fuck, we're not staying. We need to get the fuck out of here. I literally have to drag this girl out of the park." The park and cemetery are located on Native American grounds. There were a group of people at the park for a cultural event who asked us if we were okay and if one of us had screamed. I said yes, it was me, but everything is fine. When we got out of there, we all just had a "what the fuck just happened" moment of silence. Sarah did not remember anything that happened. She said she remembers sitting down with us on the grass, and she remembered the voices screaming at us, and that they were all telling us to leave. Then she said she felt like she was having a nightmare and was dreaming of what she assumed to be hell because there was fire everywhere. She didn't recall saying she wanted to stay at the park or being dragged out. The boys were speechless and didn't really have much to add. From that day on, I would have demonic nightmares 4 to 7 times a week until my freshman year of college. These nightmares would always involve a possession or extremely dense, heavy air that signified a demonic presence. I was always weighed down by the energy and could barely get away in time, when in my dream I realized the demon was present. I'm still friends with this girl to this day, and we have only mentioned it a handful of times. My logic was, if I ignored it or didn't speak it into existence, it would go away. Eventually, it did. Once in a great while, I will get the nightmares. To this day, I can't help but wonder if I was haunted by the demon after this incident. or if it was just some severe PTSD. No one that I've shared this with could ever relate to my experience. If anyone reading this can, I would love to hear about it. If you made it this far, thank you for reading. Our final story comes from user The Nightmare Kid ZZZ. Flash forward to my senior year of high school. I was hanging out a lot with a cousin who was not only a bad influence, but didn't give half a thought to anything paranormal. I, however, was getting into full baby witch mode this year. I learned to use a pendulum for communication, candle work, and some light palm reading. So, we're hanging out with a mutual friend one night, and we're bored. My cousin, let's call her Marie, says she wants to do something creepy. Our friend, we'll call her Kelly, says she heard about a haunted road somewhere. I butt right in and give them the whole story of Whiskey Hollow Road. And we're off. The whole ride, we're listening to music and having typical teenage fun. But the minute we approached the cross street, it was like my body could sense the energy again. I was in the back seat and was playing it cool as we pulled into the beginning of the road, but I felt the energy shift hard. It was sunset hour, so we had some light, but I knew our time was limited. We're rolling through and I reiterate the story again as we pee past the trees. Mary is mocking everything and calling bullshit, but Kelly is listening, and as we approach the cave, she excitedly points it out, and we stop the car. We approach the cave. The road is silent as usual, and our feet crunching the leaves seem to echo in its vast space. Mary walks straight into the cave, like the horror movie cliche she is, and kicks at the dirt, talking shit, just being your standard non-believing jerk. I tell her to chill, because if there are any spirits here, she's being disrespectful, which just fuels her fire, and she continues to be a dick. Kelly and I are standing on a large rock, just watching her be an idiot. And as I open my mouth to tell her to stop again, something happens. Without anything touching us, both mine and Kelly's knees buckle, as if someone hit the backs of our legs, and we fall into the grass and leaves. We whip around, terrified, fully expecting to see a deranged mountain man standing there, but there was nothing. Mary laughs at us for falling, and we insist that something pushed us, as we rub the grime from our jeans. Mary calls bullshit and heads back to the car. As she walks down the hill, Kelly and I try to figure out what the hell just happened and examine the rock, which was completely flat. So it's not like gravity took us down or we lost our footing. "Oh my God," Mary screams from the car. We race towards the vehicle and ask what happened. She fumbles her words, telling us to get in the car now. She says that when she opened the door, a bright white light dashed across the front of the car. It was too solid to be smoke, but not fully shaped to be a figure. I wondered for a split second if she was messing with us. But her face was pale and had no color. Mary never looked like this. She was actually worried. Kelly hopped into the front seat, and I slid into the back. Mary started the car, and as we pulled away, I couldn't help but give one last look to the cave, and I saw something. There was a figure crouched down on the top of the cave. It looked slender and was completely black, like the leather man from American Horror Story, but extremely skinny. I thought I was crazy, and just as I started to stand, Kelly let out a blood-curdling scream from the front seat. "Something's on the cave!" Mary floored the gas pedal, and we whipped down the street. I was trying to come to terms with the fact that at least two of us saw an entity on that cave, and it couldn't have been an actual person. There was no way. We would have seen someone on top of the cave when we first approached it. It wasn't a person. It was a thing. Mary shouted her mother's address into the car's GPS system, and it began routing us away from the haunted road. Its navigation voice would chime in, directing Mary's turns. As we tried to explain the figure we saw, and then the GPS said, "Turn right." Mary was so frazzled from our own experience and was avidly listening to ours that she just turned without thinking. And when we looked out the front window again, we were back at the top of Whiskey Hollow Road. The GPS brought us back to the top of the road We couldn't turn around. We had to drive down Whiskey Hollow again. "What is wrong with you?" Mary is glaring at me from the front seat. "What?" I answer. "Why are you acting like that?" I had no idea what she was talking about. I then looked out the windows and saw that we were parked at a pizza place in Mary's hometown. How did we get here? I thought. Mary then explained to me that the entire ride back, I was silently giving her a death glare through the rearview mirror and wouldn't speak when she talked to me. I would only smirk. And apparently, on the highway, I tried to open the door, fumbling with the lock and handle, but she had the child lock on. I remembered none of it. In my point of view, we turned down Whiskey Hollow Road for the second time, and then we were sitting in the parking lot. I've thought for years about what the occurrence was all about, and the only thing I can think of is that something noticed me when I first visited with my mother, and when I returned with my cousin and friend, it recognized me and latched onto me. And possibly, because my cousin was mocking and kicking things, it was going to use me as a vessel to attack her. I refused to return to that place, and wonder if the entity that got inside of me, the entity that stood on top of that cave, was the same thing that drove that couple in the 50s to kill themselves on either side of Whiskey Hollow Road. So initially, the story wasn't going to make it into the episode because it was too long. I actually had to cut the first half of the post where the user first visits the road with their mom, but doesn't witness anything. However, I strongly urge you all to check out this full post. The reason I had to include this story so bad is because I got really curious. I ventured onto Google Maps, found Whiskey Hollow Road, and took it upon myself to walk the little Google guy down the road until I found the cave. And guess what? I found it. It actually gave me chills the first time I saw it. Just like in the story, you can clearly see the cave from the road. You can even see where the rest of the hill crests over the top and has the perfect space for a creature to perch. Now, in figuring out what this creature is, it could very well be a dark entity that calls this road home, and like the user suggests, could have been the reason the couple committed suicide. However, another theory I'd like to propose is that this creature could be a type of nature guardian of some kind. That road specifically has signs posted stating that it is preserved land. Although, I'm not sure. With the user's memory loss and strange behavior, it does seem to lean further into being a dark or demonic entity. Whether it's benevolent or demonic spirits, these stories serve as a warning about the invisible forces that surround us every day, forces that can prey on your weakness and take you for themselves. Possession is not a topic to be taken lightly, as some of these users have found out. So, what do you think? Is the possibility of possession really out there? Be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Out There Cryptids for episode posts, updates, and more. Join our community on Discord where we and even you guys share the strange things that happen all around us. The link can be found on our Instagram. And if you're loving the show, consider supporting us on Patreon. As a patron, you'll get exclusive perks like no ads, bonus episodes, early access, and even the occasional surprise. Be sure to rate us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It's a great way for others to find the show and enjoy, just like you. See you next week.